Okay, I'm on. Okay, so we just talked about Emerson and we talked about Space Cat. We talked about all the different elements of this particular piece. And now we're going to look at how to write a thesis statement. And I'm going to give you this template. And this is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to do. When you take your tests, I want you to use this template. So you need to write this on your index card, write it wherever you'll have this, because this is the way that you're going to want to present your information. Now, obviously, you're going to have to change words up. Obviously, there may be something that you don't need to include in this sentence because maybe you included it in the introduction beforehand. But this is what needs to be included, and this is an excellent template for you to use, and this is the one I want you to use. So it's in the blank, so in the essay, in the speech, in the letter, whatever it is, and then you're going to give the writer and the contextual information, and then you're going to give an action verb, and then you're going to explain the three different strategies that are used. Remember, it cannot be diction and syntax and figurative language. It can't be that. It's got to be more specific than that, and it can't be ethos, pathos, and logos. So you have to be very specific about what these strategies are. In order to blank, you want a really strong verb here, and then to convince the audience, or to what? To do what? And this is an important thing that a lot of kids leave off because maybe they don't quite understand how specific they need to be, or maybe have just not learned exactly what needs to be in this thesis. So make sure that you have all those things in there. Now, I'm giving you an easy example because I think everybody knows about the three little pigs. So let's look at that. We're going to say, in the children's fable, The Three Little Pigs, the unknown author, I don't really have any contextual information here. I just know that it's a fable. I could say, I probably would put, if I were really writing this essay, I would probably talk about how it was presented orally through the years until finally it was published. But that's not going in the thesis statement. So that's just a little heads up that sometimes the contextual information may go ahead. But anyway, here I'm going to use a verb, strong verb. The author repeats an anecdote. Okay, remember he talks about what happened with the pig that made his with the sticks. And then the next one. And then finally the brick one, you got the straw and then you got the brick, and only the brick one worked, but it was harder work. So we're going to say he repeats an anecdote, and then he provides humorous character choices in order to, now notice that I only use two strategies there, only two, but they're strong. I'm using strong word, repeats and provides, and I'm using strong nouns, anecdote, humorous character choices. You see how specific that is. You need to be specific, not vague. And so he does this in order to simplify the idea that success is found by careful and thoughtful planning. And so notice that I am actually giving more information about the text than is really called for in a thesis statement. But you want to have that information so that the reader knows exactly where you're going, so that your grader knows exactly where you're going with this. And then, so here's an example for self-reliance. In the didactic essay, now if you look, it says, it asks for genre. Well, it is an essay, and I just wanted to go ahead and say that it was didactic. That's a tone word, so you might use that word in a different way, but I decided to use it here. In the didactic essay, self-reliance, transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson, strong verb, emphasizes his definition of self-reliance by, strong verb, juxtaposing ideas with varied punctuation. So remember, we talked about in Space Cat, and we talked about how you wouldn't just say, oh, he uses punctuation to do that. No, he doesn't use punctuation to do that. He used varied punctuation. I'm going to tell you exactly what they are and why he uses them in order to define and encourage independence, ultimately moving attentive readers to self-examine their own motivational actions. I actually think, now that I'm looking at it, I probably would say by juxtaposing ideas to create antithesis with varied punctuation. So I think that would be a more specific plan if I were to rewrite that. So just note that some of these words, for example, transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson, you might have already, in your introductory paragraph, you might have already said something about romanticism and kind of leading into this transcendentalist idea. You might have done that already. You might have talked about that. So you may not have to put transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson. So you might have put something else, but it's important that that information is in there. Very important. Or I have another example under here, and it's funny because I can't read it. Or Emerson juxtaposes antithetical ideas to teach by way of logical progression. To teach by way, here, let me do this. By way of logical progression that, so I'm going to say he juxtaposes antithetical ideas in order to teach by way of logical progression that, so in this way, I didn't write three things, but I'm very, very, very specific about what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it. And then when you get to the body of your essay, we're going to do that in another video, but when you get to the body of your essay, remember, every paragraph is going to actually take a chunk of the essay that you read. So in the beginning body paragraph, the first body paragraph, we're going to talk about the beginning of the essay. What does he do in the beginning of the essay? Remember, says and does. What does he say and what does he do? Now, it's a possibility that before you start right on into your evidence and your mini statements, that you might want to give just a little bit of a summary of what he wrote about. That's a possibility. Or that could have been in your intro. So really, those things are going to be up to you. And then you're going, either way, then you're going to go into that very first point. And the very first point may not start off with talking about semicolons, because it's going to talk about the first chunk of the essay. And so we're going to get to that next time. Thanks a bunch, guys.